Have you ever wondered why certain numbers keep showing up in your life? Maybe it's 11:11 on the clock, a birthday that follows you around, or a sequence you just can't ignore. What if I told you that these numbers might not be coincidences, but signs that your unconscious mind is trying to speak to you? This isn't numerology or superstition. This is the deep psychological work of Jung, a man who believed that numbers were archetypes of order, surfacing from the collective unconscious. And in this journey, we're going to uncover how numbers may be the most insidious, invisible force shaping your reality without you even knowing it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Jung once said, "Numbers are the most primitive elements of order." Unlike language, which is culturally dependent, numbers are universal. They appear across civilizations, across time, and even across dimensions of thought. Think about it. You can't measure a heartbeat without numbers. You can't manage time, organize your life, or even perceive quantity without submitting to a numerical framework. But here's the twist: what if numbers don't just describe your reality, but dictate it? What if numbers are the scaffolding of the psyche itself? What if, deep down, your mind is not just influenced by emotions or thoughts, but by a hidden code? Let's go deeper. Jung didn't view the world as a place of pure randomness. He proposed the concept of synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence that defies logical explanation. If you've ever thought of someone and they suddenly called you, or dreamed of a number that later appeared in a crucial moment in waking life, you've experienced this. Jung believed that these weren't just accidents, but evidence of a deeper order, one that numbers often reveal. He noticed that certain numbers would appear in dreams and visions, and these weren't just random symbols. They were keys, clues dropped by the unconscious, trying to bring harmony to the conscious mind. Why is this horrifying? Because it means you might not be as in control as you think. If numbers are archetypes, primordial patterns that shape your psyche, then your decisions, your behaviors, even your identity might be constructed around numerical forces you don't understand. Think about the power of the number 3, birth, life, death, mind, body, spirit, past, present, future. Or the number 4, the 4 elements, 4 directions, 4 functions of consciousness. These numbers show up again and again, not because we invent them, but because they structure the way we experience reality. You didn't choose these patterns, they chose you. And here's where it gets even more wild. Jung's exploration of mandalas, those intricate, circular diagrams, wasn't just about art or spirituality. It was about mathematics. Mandalas are often constructed with geometric precision, revealing symmetrical patterns that speak to inner order. In countless cases, patients would draw mandalas in therapy without knowing what they were. But Jung noticed a pattern. These images often emerged during psychological transformation, moments when the self was trying to heal or reorganize itself. The unconscious was using numbers and geometry to speak a language that the conscious mind had forgotten. So let's ask a terrifying question. Are you dreaming, or are you being programmed? If your unconscious mind uses numbers as a language, and if those numbers emerge from a collective unconscious shared by all of humanity, then are you ever truly thinking your own thoughts? Or are you simply decoding a script written long before you were born? And if that's true, can you ever escape it? Let's zoom in on modern life. Every day you interact with numbers, from the moment you check the time to the calories you count, the money you spend, the notifications you receive. Each one seems small, insignificant, but together they build a psychological cage. You measure your worth in salaries, followers, likes, grades, steps, scores. And the more you measure, the less you feel. You lose the essence of being in exchange for the illusion of control. Jung warned us that anything we fail to make conscious becomes fate. So what happens when we fail to make numbers conscious? They become our fate. They dictate our lives, quietly, efficiently, without resistance. Have you ever noticed how numbers dominate your anxiety? You're not just worried, you're worried about how many hours you have left, how much money you lost, how many people saw your failure. Numbers aren't just data, they are the architecture of fear. They give shape to your panic. And that's not random. That's deeply psychological, because numbers give form to the formless. They turn the abstract into the concrete. But in doing so, they also limit. They define. They trap. Now consider this. What if numbers aren't just outside you, but inside you? Jung believed in the idea of the self, a totality that includes both conscious and unconscious. And within that self, numbers play a role. Think of how dreams often come in sequences, how symbols repeat in numerical patterns. Jung saw this in his patients over and over. The woman dreams of 3 doors. A man sees 4 animals circling him. These aren't just dream details, they are psychic codes, clues to what the unconscious is trying to say. And if you ignore them, you miss the message. Worse, the message starts controlling you without your awareness. Let's pause and ask a question that should haunt you. What number is following you? Maybe it's a date, a house number, a time, a sequence. Have you ever wondered why it keeps showing up? Have you ever stopped to ask, what is this trying to tell me? Jung would say that the psyche is symbolic, and that symbols are how the unconscious communicates. If a number appears again and again, it's not just coincidence, it's a message. But the question is, are you willing to listen? In one of his most famous studies, Jung analyzed a series of dreams in which numbers progressively increased: 1 object, then 2, then 3, then 4. He interpreted this as the psyche trying to individuate, trying to move toward wholeness. The number 4, in particular, represented totality. And when patients reached that number in their dreams, they often experienced a psychological breakthrough. But what's chilling is that those who ignored the progression often experienced psychological breakdowns instead. It's as if the unconscious was screaming for balance, and when the conscious mind refused to listen, it collapsed under the weight of its own ignorance. Numbers are not neutral. They are loaded with meaning. Think of ancient traditions. The Pythagoreans believed numbers were the essence of the cosmos. The Chinese I Ching is based entirely on numerical divination. Even the Bible is filled with sacred numbers: 7 days, 40 nights, 12 tribes. These aren't arbitrary. They are echoes of a deeper order. And Jung saw that order not as superstition, but as psychological truth. He saw that when the conscious mind aligns with the symbolic logic of the unconscious, transformation happens. But when we deny it, we become fragmented, lost. So now we must ask, what is your symbolic logic? What numbers dominate your dreams, your routines, your obsessions? You might think you're just checking the time, but maybe time is checking you. You might think you're budgeting money, but maybe money is budgeting your soul. Every time you reduce your life to a number, you risk losing something essential. But every time you interpret a number as a symbol, you gain insight into the hidden architecture of your mind. Carl Jung's genius wasn't in creating a system. It was in showing us that systems already exist within us. And numbers, he believed, were the purest form of that inner system. They are the fingerprints of the infinite on the finite. And when we ignore them, we become blind. But when we listen, when we truly look at the numbers not as data, but as destiny, we awaken. And that awakening is terrifying, because it means everything you thought was random might be meaningful. And everything you thought was yours might be borrowed from the collective unconscious. If you're still watching, that means something inside of you is stirring. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's fear, or maybe it's that quiet voice you've ignored for years finally whispering, "Pay attention." Because once you start seeing numbers not just as measurements, but as messages, you can't unsee them. You begin to realize just how deeply they've been embedded into your psyche. You begin to question, was I ever really free? Carl Jung didn't believe in randomness the way most modern thinkers do. He believed in meaning. And meaning, according to Jung, is not found only in grand events, but in the smallest patterns, especially those that repeat. He saw human consciousness as a boat floating on a vast, dark ocean. That ocean is the unconscious. And when something from the depths tries to reach us, it often does so through symbols. And one of the most powerful symbolic systems? Numbers. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but isn't this just my mind playing tricks on me? And that's a fair question. But let's go deeper. Why would your mind choose numbers to play tricks with? Why not colors or smells or something more subjective? Because numbers are precise. They are archetypal. They don't lie. The number 4 is always 4. The square is always a square. In a world of chaos, numbers are the one symbolic language that doesn't change. And that's exactly why the unconscious uses them, because they cut through the noise. Jung noticed that during times of psychological crisis or spiritual transformation, numbers would emerge in his patients' dreams and fantasies with alarming frequency. And these weren't just any numbers, they followed patterns. Sometimes increasing, sometimes repeating, often pointing toward a deeper psychological structure. This was especially evident in the phenomenon he called mandala dreams. People who had never heard of mandalas would draw perfect geometric figures, circles within squares, fourfold patterns, and radial symmetry. These weren't just pretty pictures. They were blueprints of the psyche trying to restore order. Imagine this: your unconscious is a wild, infinite forest. Every trauma, every memory, every archetype lives in there. And when the forest becomes too overgrown, too chaotic, the psyche sends a signal, a number, a symbol, a pattern. It's trying to organize itself, to bring harmony. That's what a number is in the deepest sense, a tool of psychic integration. But here's the horrifying part. If you ignore that signal, chaos festers. And eventually, it finds another way to express itself through anxiety, depression, addiction, conflict. The numbers will speak, one way or another. Now let's shift to the modern world. We've taken numbers and weaponized them. Algorithms decide what you see, what you buy, who you meet. Social media platforms run on engagement metrics, likes, shares, views. Your identity gets reduced to a string of data points. And the scariest part is it works. You feel that dopamine hit when you see a number go up. You feel failure when it goes down. You are not just being influenced by numbers anymore. You are being controlled by them. But this isn't just about technology. It's about your relationship with numbers. Ask yourself, what numbers do you chase? What numbers do you fear? Is it your weight? Your age? Your income? Your follower count? These numbers aren't neutral, they carry emotional charge. They become containers for meaning. And if you're not aware of the meaning behind them, you become a slave to the surface. You start believing that your value is quantifiable, that your soul can be measured. Jung would call this a dissociation from the self, because the self, in his view, is not defined by numbers. It is the totality, the union of opposites, the balance of conscious and unconscious. When you reduce yourself to numbers, you cut off half of your being. You become a fragment, and fragmentation leads to suffering. That's why Jung's work was always about integration. And numbers, paradoxically, can be both the prison and the key. Let's talk about synchronicity again, those haunting coincidences that feel too precise to be chance. Jung believed that these moments are cracks in the illusion of randomness. They reveal a hidden order, and often they involve numbers. A patient sees the number 22 in a dream, then later sees it on a license plate, then on a receipt. At first it seems weird, then it becomes eerie, and then it becomes undeniable. Something is trying to get through. But here's the question, get through from where? Jung believed in a reality beyond what we see, a realm of archetypes, a collective unconscious that binds us all. And in that realm, numbers aren't just symbols, they are forces. The number 4 isn't just a quantity, it's a structure. It represents wholeness. The number 1 represents unity. 2 is duality, tension. 3 is synthesis. These aren't just ideas, they are energies, and they affect you whether you know it or not. So when a number keeps showing up, don't ask, is this just coincidence? Ask, what is this telling me? Because the unconscious doesn't waste symbols. It doesn't play games. If a number repeats, it's a message. Maybe your psyche is trying to unite something. Maybe it's warning you. Maybe it's preparing you. But if you dismiss it, you're not being scientific, you're being blind. Let me ask you something deeply personal. When was the last time you counted something obsessively? Maybe it was calories. Maybe it was hours of sleep. Maybe it was how many times someone texted you back. Why do we do this? Because numbers give us a false sense of control. They make us feel like reality is manageable, predictable, safe. But life isn't safe. The psyche isn't safe. And sometimes the numbers become a ritual, a shield against chaos. But if we rely on them too much, they become the chaos. This is where Jung's shadow work becomes crucial. The shadow is the part of you that you reject, repress, deny. And often, the shadow hides in your numerical obsessions. The person who counts every calorie may be terrified of losing control. The person who watches their bank account obsessively may carry a wound of scarcity. The person who tracks their social media analytics may be starving for validation. The numbers become mirrors, and if you're brave enough to look, they can show you the truth. But most people don't look. They run, they scroll, they swipe, they binge. Because facing the meaning behind the numbers means facing yourself. And that's the scariest thing of all. Let's go even deeper. Jung wrote about the quaternity, the sacred four. It appears in cross symbols, mandalas, the four elements, the four functions of consciousness: thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition. He believed that when the number 4 appears in dreams or symbols, it signals a psychological need for integration. So ask yourself, are you living as a whole person, or are you stuck in a fragment? Are you thinking but not feeling? Intuiting but not sensing? When you see the number 4, it might not be just 4. It might be your unconscious saying, "Come back to balance." And here's a radical idea. What if the universe itself is structured numerically? Not just in physics, but in meaning. What if reality is built on patterns that emerge from the same archetypal forces Jung studied? Then every time you notice a pattern, a sequence, a repeated number, you are touching the fabric of that hidden order. You are glimpsing the architecture of existence. And every time you ignore it, you step further into illusion. The modern world teaches us that meaning is subjective, that numbers are just tools, that order is a human invention. But Jung would say, no, order is innate. Numbers are not tools, they are truths. And if you don't understand the truths behind them, you will spend your life chasing shadows, wondering why you feel empty, even when the numbers say you're successful. So here's your challenge. The next time a number repeats in your life, don't dismiss it. Don't log it and forget it. Sit with it. Ask it why it's here. Meditate on it. Write about it. Let it speak. Because maybe, just maybe, your unconscious is trying to lead you somewhere. Back to wholeness. Back to self. Back to the place where numbers are not prisons, but portals. What would happen if you let go of the number that defines you? Would you feel free or would you feel lost? This is where the psychological truth becomes undeniable. We say numbers don't control us, but without them, we panic. Remove the clock, and we lose our sense of time. Remove the price tag, and we lose our sense of value. Remove the score, and we lose our sense of worth. That's the horrifying truth Carl Jung hinted at. We are addicted to numbers not because they are real, but because they give us a sense of identity. And yet, the more we depend on them, the further we drift from our true self. Jung often warned that modern man suffers from a loss of meaning. He said our greatest psychic danger is not external conflict, but internal emptiness. And into that emptiness, we pour numbers. We fill the void with statistics, goals, deadlines, analytics. We measure everything, hoping that if we quantify enough, we'll finally feel whole. But the soul doesn't work that way. The soul doesn't respond to numbers, it responds to depth, into mystery, to symbol. And when you reduce your life to digits, you starve your soul. Let's return to the idea of synchronicity. Jung believed that meaningful coincidences arise when the psyche is aligned with the deeper fabric of reality. And often, numbers are how that alignment becomes visible. You see a number right when you need it. A sequence appears when you're at a crossroads. A friend mentions a number you just dreamed about. These are not accidents. They are signals. The unconscious is trying to wake you up. But the question is, will you listen, or will you dismiss it as random noise? This is where transformation begins. Not in the grand, dramatic moments, but in the small patterns you finally decide to notice. The number 3 appearing in your dreams. The number 7 showing up every time you have a spiritual insight. The number 9 haunting the end of your relationships. These are not just data points. They are archetypal signatures. They are the psyche's way of narrating your story with symbols older than language. Jung didn't invent these ideas, he uncovered them. He studied ancient traditions, alchemy, mythology. And he saw that across cultures, across history, the same numbers kept appearing with the same meanings. 3 for transformation, 4 for wholeness, 7 for initiation, 12 for cosmic order. These numbers weren't just cultural artifacts. They were psychological constants. They emerged from the collective unconscious, the shared psychic blueprint of humanity. And if they show up in your life, they're not random. They're part of your map. But here's the catch. You can't decode the map without facing your own shadow. Because sometimes the numbers that haunt you are the ones you refuse to integrate. The person obsessed with the number 1 might be hiding a fear of loneliness. The one who keeps seeing the number 2 might be wrestling with inner conflict. The one tormented by the number 6 might be running from responsibility. Numbers don't just reflect the world outside, they reveal the war inside. And that's why Jung's work is so revolutionary. He didn't tell people what to believe. He asked them to look inward, to listen to the dreams, the patterns, the symbols emerging from within. He said that healing doesn't come from ignoring the unconscious, it comes from making it conscious. And when it comes to numbers, making them conscious means asking, what do they mean to me? What part of my psyche are they pointing to? What am I not seeing? So let's make this painfully practical. Look at your life right now. What's the number you check most obsessively? Is it your bank balance? Your weight? Your social media stats? Ask yourself, what does this number represent emotionally? What story does it tell you about yourself? And then ask the deeper question, is that story true? Or is it a defense mechanism, an illusion you've clung to because the truth is too raw? Maybe your obsession with money isn't about greed, it's about survival. Maybe your fixation on age isn't about vanity, it's about mortality. Maybe your obsession with time management isn't about productivity, it's about fear of wasting your life. When you follow the number down to its emotional core, you find the wound. And once you find the wound, you can begin to heal. This is where the real work begins. Not on your phone, not on your spreadsheets, but in your journal, in your dreams, in your quiet moments. Jung said that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. And in dreams, numbers are never random. They are precise. They are intentional. A dream of 3 birds is not the same as a dream of 4 birds. One signals transition, the other signals integration. To understand this is to begin decoding the language of your soul. But you don't have to be a mystic. You just have to be honest. Start tracking the numbers that appear in your life and dreams, not like a scientist, but like a poet. Ask what they feel like, not just what they count. What does the number 5 feel like when it shows up in your dream? What does it remind you of? What does it want from you? This is not madness. This is meaning. And in a world drowning in data, meaning is your lifeline. Let's go even further. Imagine that your entire life is a mandala, a sacred structure slowly building toward wholeness. Every stage of your journey marked by a different number. Childhood shaped by the one pure unity. Adolescence pulled apart by the two conflict and duality. Young adulthood driven by the 3 growth and expansion. A midlife crisis marked by the 4, the need for integration. And beyond that, the spiral continues. You are not just living, you are unfolding. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You don't control the numbers. They emerge when they are ready. Your job is not to force them, but to listen. To be awake. To see that when the same number shows up over and over, it's not an algorithm glitch, it's a call. The call to align with the deeper order of your psyche. To stop living by external metrics and start living by internal symbols. To stop measuring your life and start experiencing it. In the end, Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires surrender. Surrender to the unconscious, to the symbolic, to the irrational. And that includes surrendering to the numbers that haunt you. Not to obey them blindly, but to understand them deeply. Because when you understand the number, you understand the message. And when you understand the message, you free yourself from the compulsion. So here's your final challenge. The next time you see a number that feels significant, pause. Don't just notice it. Dialogue with it. Ask it what it wants. Ask it what part of you it represents. Ask it what it's trying to heal. Treat it as a guide, a guardian, a fragment of the self. Because maybe that number isn't just a coincidence. Maybe it's your soul knocking. And maybe, just maybe, the horrifying truth is also the most liberating. Numbers aren't controlling you. They're calling you home.